Otto Wallin defeats Dominic Breazeale on a 12-round unanimous decision. Wallin really boxed Breazeale's head off. It wasn't particularly competitive for most of the fight. Breazeale was hit with, I think, a left hand. Was it early or midway through the fight, which swole up his eye quite badly, and you could see it was causing him some distress. His trainer, Abel Sanchez, was willing him to come forward and just hit anything that he could. But Otto Wallin was doing a very good job of outboxing Dominic Breazeale. Now, Dominic Breazeale is a very rudimentary heavyweight. He's a big, tough guy. He can punch a bit. And he's got a lot of heart, but he doesn't have a lot of skill. And Wallin was able to waltz around the ring like a ballroom dancer, out of his southpaw stance and just ping Dominic Breazeale constantly. Just rat-a-tat-tat all the time, hitting him. I mean, his accuracy was tremendous. Again, I'm not saying that that's particularly difficult to be accurate against Dominic Breazeale because he doesn't move his head and he's a very big target. He's difficult to miss. But nonetheless, Otto Wallin was maneuvering his way around the ring very nicely, pinging Dominic Breazeale constantly with shots, left hands, right hands, jabs. The jab was often a flicking jab rather than a stiff ramrod shot, but it was still doing the job and keeping Dominic Breazeale in place. In the mid-rounds, the commentary team were talking about maybe Wallin stepping in and trying to take Dominic Breazeale out. I'm not sure why Otto Wallin didn't. Maybe he felt like Breazeale was too tough because he did hit Breazeale with some real big left hands early on in the fight and Breazeale didn't go anywhere. So Otto Wallin's punching power, I mean, maybe he hits harder than this fight suggests, but in this fight, he didn't really step in with his shots. He didn't really try to load up and hit Breazeale with anything seriously concussive. He seemed content to just box and move around. So I thought it was a decent workmanlike performance by Otto Wallin. Dominic Breazeale, as the fight went on, did gain some momentum. Again, his trainer, Abel Sanchez, was trying to G him up in the corner. And if it had been a 15-round bout, maybe it would have got interested in the final 3 rounds because Breazeale actually seemed to have the momentum in the final couple rounds. Whereas Wallin, I think it might have been after the 9th or 10th, he was asking his corner what round it is. And by the way, his corner did a very, very good job. Excellent instructions from Joey Gamache. I always remember Joey Gamache from that fight he had with Arturo Gatti, which was a horrendous knockout that Joey Gamache suffered. I think he had like neurological problems after that knockout defeat. And but anyway, very, very ugly. You can go watch that on YouTube. But he was giving Otto Wallin good instructions throughout, and the same for the Tyson Fury fight. I really like the pairing between Otto Wallin and Joey Gamache, at least in terms of what Gamache tells him in between rounds. Now, Otto Wallin's style, he's very European, like the old school classic European style. So he's quite upright. The way he holds his arms is almost a little bit amateurish, but it's effective. I mean, we saw against Tyson Fury, he was able to land his left hand. We saw that he's an awkward guy to hit because he's quite light on his feet. You see, despite the fact that Otto Wallin is listed here at 6'5.5", 240 pounds is relatively light. I mean, that's kind of similar to what Anthony Joshua weighs about now, right? Around 240 pounds. Actually, Anthony Joshua was slightly higher than that. But against Tyson Fury, he was 236. The fight prior to that, 227. So you can see Otto Wallin, despite the fact that he's tall, he's not as heavy as some of the other tall men in the division, and therefore he can move around the ring better than a lot of them can. So, yeah, I quite liked Otto Wallin's performance here. Again, he wasn't exactly setting the heavyweight division alight, but he didn't do much wrong. There were moments when Dominic Breazeale's relentlessness kind of got to Otto Wallin a little bit because he languished on the ropes a couple times and allowed Dominic Breazeale to get some uppercuts and hooks off. Breazeale was swinging for the fences in there. And in fact, he was like air conditioning the arena with some of those big swings. You could feel the wind coming off him. But for the most part, Wallin was able to get out of the way. Got clipped here and there, a few uppercuts, especially late on in the fight, managed to catch him. But for the most part, he was able to evade Dominic Breazeale's heavy artillery. Just keep pinging him, and took a 12-round unanimous decision, well deserved. So let's see where Otto Wallin goes from here. let's see if he can build upon the performance he put in against Tyson Fury, because Dominic Breazeale is, I guess, a decent scalp to have. You know, he's a tough guy. He's upset some people along the way. You know, he's taken some unbeaten records and whatnot. But he's not exactly elite in the heavyweight division. Otto Wallin has ambitions. He'd like to get back in there with Tyson Fury. He fancies his chances against, I think, most or all of the top heavyweights. So, hey, let's see, man. Again, a lot of people are looking at Wallin and they're saying, oh, yeah, he beat Breazeale, but Breazeale's not very good. He's terribly slow. They're saying that Otto Wallin wouldn't stand a chance against somebody like Dillian Whyte, for example. It's heavyweight boxing. I don't want to write anybody off until they've been in there. And based upon what I saw in the Tyson Fury fight, Otto Wallin could be an awkward night's work for a lot of heavyweights. So, look, Tyson Fury on the front foot, which is how he primarily fought Wallin, isn't the most sophisticated fighter. He tends to be a little crude on the front foot when he's fighting up close anyway. Against Deontay Wilder, beautiful stuff. But against Wallin, where he's fighting real close, you know, on the inside, bit messy, Tyson Fury, when he fights like that. Other fighters, for example, Anthony Joshua, if he'd had Otto Wallin in the positions that Tyson Fury had him in, up close on the inside, you have to imagine AJ would have done a lot more damage in them situations there, because that's not really Fury's forte. Fury can fight on the inside, but he's just not as formidable up close as AJ is. So when I'm thinking about Wallin in that situation with AJ, he probably would have found himself in a lot more trouble. Dillian Whyte, well, Wallin's movement is very good. And Dillian Whyte is not the quickest on his feet. He's a southpaw as well. So I wouldn't be shocked, to be honest with you, to see Dillian Whyte having issues with Otto Wallin. And he also appears to take a decent shot. You know, Tyson Fury is not a massive puncher, but he hit Otto Wallin, but couldn't really seriously hurt him. Same with Dominic Breazeale. Dominic Breazeale can punch. I don't think he really caught Wallin clean with the kind of shots that, let's say, he caught Izo Agono with, or the shots he caught Amir Mansour with, because Wallin's feet are good, and he was taking the sting off a lot of the shots. He was rolling with the shots, and Breazeale was just very, very inaccurate. So, you know, I don't want to say that Breazeale caught him with his best punches, but the shots that did get through, Wallin took him absolutely no problem at all. He didn't seem bothered whatsoever by any single shot. It was just more the relentlessness of Dominic Breazeale that made him, you know, start feeling a little uncomfortable later on in the fight. The relentlessness of the guy. And obviously, some of the big shots were landing on his arms and gloves, you know. And again, he felt the air conditioning of some of those big swings that Dominic Breazeale was messing with. So he understood that there was some serious power there, but he managed to avoid it for the most part. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below about Otto Wallin, his performance against Dominic Breazeale, who you'd like to see him in with next, and how far you think he can go.